Hello, puppets and pygmies. I hope you had a good recess. Hey, where's Dean?
He didn't survive recess, Mr. Wormwood.
Nope, he didn't. Awesome. That's one less report card I have to write. So we're going to continue our lessons on debt. But before we start, a couple of announcements. First, we have received word that our enemy has sent more spies. Remember, they are masters of disguise. Everybody is asked to keep their eyes open and report anyone suspicious.
Yes, we will.
Good. Second, we have a new student. Please welcome Donna.
Hi everyone.
Would you like to tell us about yourself?
Well, my name is Donna and
Never mind. I don't really care. I'm just here for the paycheck. Go join the others. Last class, we looked at debt. To recap, when our patients borrow, they usually pay interest. This is a cost that reduces their future lifetime ability to spend. It also increases their debt load, reducing their discretionary spending and making it harder to save. It makes them more vulnerable to setbacks.
Does that mean people should never borrow? All debt is bad?
Well, Neil, let me answer that by giving you these chainsaws.
Okay.
Now go over there and play with them. Try juggling.
This is fun. Ouch. Ouch. Ow. Idiot.
I love hands-off demonstrations.
Yay, skibbity.
So as the rest of you can see, chainsaws are dangerous tools. But because they are tools, they can also be useful. What can you do with chainsaws?
Clear-cut rainforests.
Exactly, Heather. You can use them to cut down the rainforest, which is good. They are dangerous, but they can have a good purpose if used properly. And like most tools, they can increase efficiency or productivity. Debt is like a chainsaw. Used carefully, it can be helpful, but use it incorrectly and you can hurt yourself. Our job is to understand when it can be used positively and to ensure our patients do it wrong.
Mr. Wormwood, are we just going to leave him lying there?
Oh, of course not, Donna. He is a tripping hazard. Could somebody please drag him into the hallway?
I'll do it.
Thanks, Amanda. Don't forget the arm. With debt, there are some financial advisors who tell everyone that all debt is bad. No one should use it. These people are making black and white rules without considering personal circumstances. We like these absolute no debt people. They take away options people can use to make their lives better. Or they make people feel shamed if they end up having to borrow. They help do our job for us. There are times when debt may be useful, even beneficial. People call this good debt. However, those situations are rare. It may be good debt, but it still adds to the person's debt load. It still carries a cost and makes people more vulnerable to setbacks. But people could have a worse life if they automatically rule out all uses of debt. First, having access to debt can sometimes help them get through an emergency. Let's say Pat's father is very sick but lives on the other side of the country. Pat wants to visit but hasn't saved enough. If he couldn't use debt, he wouldn't be able to take the trip. If his father passes away, he would regret that for the rest of his life.
That's nice. He got to see his daddy. Oh no. Debt made his life better.
Yes, it did, but at a cost. If he had an emergency fund, he could have covered the cost of the trip without having to pay interest. People are better off building savings to cover emergencies, but circumstances sometimes make it hard to save enough. One of the things about emergencies is that they are unanticipated. You don't know when it will happen or how much it will cost. It's hard to always save enough if they can't be anticipated. Finally, you can't plan the frequency of emergencies. What if someone has several emergencies in a row? They haven't had a chance to rebuild emergency funds and another emergency hits them. When a setback arises, it is better to use savings to cover it. It is also better to reduce discretionary spending, but if that is still not enough, then they could finally borrow. Ideally, borrowing is the last case scenario. However, we want people to think of it as their first case solution. Instead of saving, we want them to think their credit cards or lines of credit are their emergency funds. And since unexpected costs pop up all the time, in all sizes, they just keep borrowing over and over.
Yay, skibbity.
Who keeps yelling skibbity? Stop it. That's such an annoying word. The next person to use it gets stabbed.
But didn't we invent that word?
We did,
Why can't we use it then?
but we invented it to annoy human school teachers and parents.
This is school. Skibbity, skibbity.
Human teachers aren't allowed to stab their students. I can.
Ow, ah.
Could someone please drag her into the hallway?
I'll do it.
Thanks, Amanda. Let's continue. The second way debt can be good. It can be used to increase lifetime earning potential. Let's say Pat wants to get some training so he can better his life. Getting an education might be the only option for him to improve his lot in life. The sooner he starts training, the sooner his income improves, and the sooner his life improves. Or instead of education or training, maybe he wants to start a business. That business will potentially provide him income throughout his life. Without a business loan, he could never start the business. He might never be able to pursue that opportunity. In both cases, by taking on debt carefully, he might actually increase his lifetime earning potential. He'll earn more over his lifetime than the cost of the debt. Without borrowing, only rich people could ever afford schooling or training or to start a business. Here's an example looking at taking out a loan for education, but it could apply to starting a business. Let's say Pat currently earns $40,000 a year and averages a 1.5% raise each year. He works 30 years at his job. Income compounds, which means your wage increases each year is on your starting salary and all previous wage increases. In 30 years, he'll be making a salary of about $61.5 thousand each year. Over his 30 years, he will earn about $1.5 million. If he goes to school and gets a new career, he might earn $50,000 each year. If he does, in 30 years, he'll be making $77,000 each year. His earnings over 30 years is $1.88 million. That's about $375,000 more.
Awesome. Way to go, Pat. Bad. Bad, Pat.
To get a new career, Pat needs to get some training. It will cost $20,000. He can borrow and start the training now, or save up and start his training in 5 years. That's where we come in. We tell him that all debt is bad. He must save up $20,000. So he only works 25 years at his new career. That's 5 more years working at his $40,000 a year job, and only 25 years at his $50,000 a year job. In 30 years, he'll be earning $71.4 thousand per year, which is less than if he started training earlier. His earnings over 30 years is $1.7 million. He saved whatever interest he would have had to pay, but he gave up about $167,000. He lost 5 years compounding on the higher salary. But getting an education doesn't mean total income will always be better, does it? It depends, right? Yes, but there are a lot of factors. Are they training for a career that is in demand? What is the average income for that occupation? How much or how often do salaries increase in that field? How much do they borrow compared to how much they make? But a secondary benefit is job satisfaction. Would they be doing something that they like more than the job they left? In this example, Pat could either work 30 years doing something he likes or 25 years doing it. If the new job is more fulfilling, by not borrowing, that's 5 years less fulfillment.
Oh my. He might spend an extra 5 years working in customer service. That's horrendous. Tremendous. Yeah, that's tremendous.
Starting a business can be the same. Some people want to be their own bosses, or they have a dream of creating something they're passionate about, and a business would give them purpose. The third benefit is using debt to buy long-term durable or productive assets. They get to use the assets now and into the future. Unlike consumables, these types of assets last longer and can provide continuous benefits. Think vehicles. Someone needs to be able to get to work, or transport their family around. Or furniture. They need a decent mattress to sleep on. They need chairs and a table that they will use daily.
If they get an immediate long-lasting benefit, their life is better.
You sound happy about that. These are bad things. We must stop them from borrowing.
It's hard to stop them, so we don't try. These purchases are for a good reason. Let's say someone needs to get a car to get to work. He has to borrow to buy a car. It's for a good reason. Or a house. They need a place to live. The reason for the purchase is for such a good reason, it's hard for us to convince them otherwise. It's why they call this good debt. Because the benefits are so logical or appealing, it's good. They would be right. It is good debt for a good reason, but it still adds to their debt load, so they are more vulnerable. What we want to do is use the so-called good reasons to get them to spend more. They need a vehicle to get to work, but since they have to borrow anyway, let's get them to buy a vehicle that is more than they need. They could have gotten to work with a reliable used car for $15,000. Get them to buy a more expensive brand new vehicle like a Ford Ram or GMC Canyon pickup truck for $50,000. Tell them they deserve it. Tell them they'll impress people. Tell them they're a success because they can drive a shiny big truck. And it's all justified because they needed a car. They just didn't need a truck. We can turn good debt into bad debt. And the great thing is, when they're out driving this expensive truck thinking they're so great, what are people really thinking?
That they have a small wee-wee.
Exactly, Amanda. You got it. Debt and mockery. Durable goods are great to have them buy on credit because it often means they're spending beyond their means. We get them to buy more than they need. They need a couch? It has to be new and expensive. They need a smartphone? Make sure it's the newest one. They need a place to live? Buy the biggest house they can. Make sure it has an extra bedroom in case guests come to visit. They basically have just bought a room that will sit empty most of the time. Mr. Wormwood, although they have more debt, aren't they happier because they have better stuff? Good question, Kent. Studies have shown that happiness derived from buying stuff doesn't last. There may be a spike of joy, but it fades. So Pat buys a big truck. He feels happy and overjoyed. That may last a few months. Then his level of happiness falls back to normal. The truck is just something he has. If he's commuting, the truck doesn't make it better. He's just living his miserable life. To get a new surge of happiness, he needs to buy something else. Or even better, he needs to replace what he has. We can use this to get them to treat durable goods like consumable goods. A modern car can last 20 plus years, but get them to buy a new one every 4 to 7 years on credit, and you've gotten them to treat it like a consumable. Let's say a used car would have cost Pat $15,000 and last another 15 years. Instead, get him to buy a new truck for $50,000.
Small wee wee.
Then get him to replace that truck on credit every 5 years, and that's $300,000 over 30 years. And there's interest on top of the purchase price. Now do that with his smartphone every 2 years, his furniture every 7 to 8 years, his home every 10 years. We want them to buy now, buy more, and buy often. If we can get them to do that on credit, we reduce their lifetime ability to consume. We win.
So we want them to take on large amounts of debt without thinking it through?
Exactly. Debt for improving one's circumstances can be good, but it has to be well thought out and researched. We want to encourage them to make these decisions based on emotion or bad advice. Even if there are potential good reasons for the debt, it's easy to tip them from good debt to bad debt. Try to get them to do these 5 things. 1. Relying on debt instead of planning. For example, having emergency savings or lower fixed expenses lets people handle financial setbacks without borrowing. Borrowing should be the last option. Instead, get them to rely on credit cards and lines of credit as their first go-to for an emergency. Or buying something they need, their first car or their first smartphone. If they are just starting their careers, they might need to borrow, but after that, they could save up for their next vehicle or their next smartphone. Stop them from doing that so they have to borrow over and over. 2. Overuse the "it's necessary" excuse. People are emotional. When they want something, they want it. They are looking for a reason to buy. Let's say Pat wants to buy an apartment. Housing prices are extremely high. It would put him at a riskier level of debt load for his income level. But he really wants to buy. He watches a crappy animated YouTube video like this one, pointing out that there are possible benefits to taking on debt. That's it. He found a loophole to justify buying now. But if the numbers are too high and he can't afford it, he can't afford it. Just because something could be good debt in some circumstances doesn't automatically mean it's good for everyone or good in all circumstances.
We're influencers.
Yay!
Oh my Dark Lord, I hate this generation. You know there's a special place in hell for influencers.
Okay, boomer.
Did you just call me a boomer?
No! No! No!
3. Overbuying. People may have a need, which becomes their excuse to overbuy. When people borrow to buy something they need, they are more likely to spend more to buy more than they need. Need to get a post-secondary education? Let's add in 4 years of living expenses instead of living at home. Need a washing machine? Get one with the steam or the sanitize features, even if you never need it. 4. Replacing frequently. The more often somebody replaces an item using debt, the less benefit they get for taking on that debt. A consumable is something that is used up quickly. For example, someone borrows to buy lunch today. They eat it. It's gone. Tomorrow they borrow again to buy another lunch. That's definitely a consumable. We generally believe if we buy something that is durable and usable over a longer period of time, it's a good purchase. However, if we don't use it over its full lifespan, we are not getting the full benefit of the item. 5. Finally, failing to research properly or calculate the benefit. They look at the so-called good reason for debt without actually thinking it through, or they do it without doing any research. An example is student loans. Yes, more training could give you more income in the future, but not always. Not all degrees give the same benefit. Sure, going to school might increase their income, but are they getting an education in something that will lead to a better paying job? Or they pursue training to get a job, but they end up hating that job. Some people have idealistic dreams of what they will be doing once they get trained. Think how many people with marketing degrees end up in sales instead of ad agencies like they thought. We want to encourage them making these decisions emotionally. Overemphasize following their passion. We don't want them to think about whether or not that decision is a good one financially. Student loans are particularly good for building resentment. They borrow to get training that will increase their future income. It fails. They end up getting a job that doesn't pay more or isn't related to their training. They resent the loan. But what if it succeeds? They do get a better job. Well, they forget that they wouldn't have gotten that job without the loan in the first place. They still resent the loan. And then there are business loans. They may help people, but they also have great power to destroy. If they start a business, we want them to dream big, not envision obstacles. We want them to have bad business plans and no contingency funds. We want them to invest their life savings. If they borrow on the belief that their future income will increase without careful research and planning, they can end up owing large amounts of money with nothing to show for it. That's all for now. Time for recess. You go play while I find out if there's any more information about our spy. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this and our first video on debt has given you a basic understanding of concepts to consider when borrowing on credit. There are many negatives to owing money. However, sometimes the cost of debt provides a benefit that outweighs the costs. But every person is different, so what one person sees as a bad financial purchase, another person might see as a good one. Hopefully, having some knowledge of the pitfalls surrounding debt will help you to decide if a purchase on credit is right for you. You get to decide how much debt and what sort of debt you want to use in your life. You may decide to use no debt. The next video will be the third and last video on debt in our Basic Financial Principles series. In it, we will look at how lenders assess borrowers and the costs of being a risky borrower. Welcome back. So, little spy, you thought you could pull the wool over my eyes, make a fool out of me in my own class. But guess what? During the break, I figured it out. The clue was right there in your name. You are the spy, Isabel. Your name Isabel means pledged to God.
It's not me. What about her? Donna is short for Madonna.
Is that true, Donna?
It's short for Belladonna. That's it. It's short for Belladonna.
Sounds good to me. Goodbye, spy.
Mr. Wormwood, couldn't Isabel's name also come from Belladonna?
Oh, you have a point. My bad.